What are all those people, baby? You're gonna do more than just belch at them, right? You want to say hi to them as well? Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, you're so pretty. Yes, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. Look at them all. They're your fans. They like your little face. Oh, they do. They like your little face. Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to your daily Penguin and your daily Frida, your glimpse of my little bean, and our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. We don't know what we're going to encounter from day to day. We don't know whether or not we're going to encounter something very well known or obscure, whether we're going to encounter a whole shelf of authors or only one. Part of this is due to a lack of organization on the Penguin Classic wall. This Penguin Classic tour is meant to correct that. But another part of it is a more joyous thing, which is that part of it arises from the fact that Penguin has grown less predictable as it's grown older. And this is a perfect case in point, our Penguin Classic for today. It's a template I wish they would reproduce many, many times. There are many, many books that I would recommend. This is The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy by Jakob Burckhardt, who was from Basel and was possibly Basel's second most famous son. And he was a lifelong Basel resident. He loved it there. He was an ordinary person. He rather prized, even fetishized, his ordinary person status. Just lived in a couple of rooms over a shop, went to do his shopping the same way everybody else did. Even once he was world-renowned, even once he was eminent, once everyone knew his name. But is a little bit of curiosity. Now, isn't really all that curious to me if you know what a change of location does to the old creative juices. He didn't write this book in Basel. He wrote it in Zurich. But and it's, I think, come to be his most famous work. It's just what the title says. It's Renaissance history. Totally involving, totally readable and engaging, totally individual, and idiosyncratic, but not in a way that makes you question the veracity, just in a way that makes you aware that you were in the author's presence the whole time. This is a book written by a person, not by a committee, and not by emotionless space aliens 10,000 years from now. And that makes it wonderful to me. And that was very much part of the program for Burckhardt. He didn't like reading histories in which the historian left himself out of the work. Not personally, but in terms of a tone, in terms of being present to tell the story, in terms of making it readable and enjoyable. This translation is by S.G.C. Middlemore, with an introduction by Peter Burke and notes by Peter Murray. So, a committee affair, and one that prolongs a little quirk of Penguin Classics that they've had from the very beginning. So it's 75 years that this has just annoyed the cheese out of me. That business of a whole parade of initials and then a surname, that just drives me nuts. And in Penguin, you find that all the time. S.G.C. Middlemore. I guarantee you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Middlemore's friends don't wave across the quad and say, "Hey, SGC." He has a name. This person, male or female, has a name. That bugs me. But the translation is really good, and that's good. I'm very glad to see this in the Penguin Classic line, because Penguin Classic is, to a certain extent, aimed at schools. So I have to believe that part of the reason this thing exists at all is to introduce Burckhardt to students. And that's terrific. It's a little bit odd. Burckhardt founded no school. He had no real disciples. No one really points to him now as the head tributary of any line of thought. That was, again, very conscious on his part. He distrusted philosophies of history because, as he pointed out, history is not systematic. Philosophies systematize information, and history is fundamentally not systematic. If you see systems and impose them, you are doing violence to history. You can see that in this book and in his great book on Constantine the Great. You can see that very much because the thing ripples and explodes and curls and stagnates just the way events in real time do. I think it's fantastic. Pulling it off the shelf, I was all the more tempted. Some Penguins that I pull off the shelf for your Daily Penguin tempt me a lot more than others to just sit down and read it. I noticed when I pulled this off the shelf that I took a minute to reinforce it because I really love this book. And because I think at the time that I found it, I was enormously pleased that it existed at all as a Penguin Classic. But flipping through it, I noticed that it has, at least in the, it has obnoxious neon highlighting. I must have missed that when I got it, or I must have thought, neon highlighting or no, you never see a Penguin Classic of Burckhardt, so you should grab it whether it has neon highlighting or not. And that makes me think that this is a good example, a good case. I've shown it before in these Daily Penguins, where the Penguin Classic I have because I love Penguin, I love Penguin Classics, but that if I care about the book, I might get another edition of it, a different edition. I'd be willing to bet that there are 8 million editions of this book that are out there in hardcover, illustrated hardcovers, hardcovers with those built-in little cloth bookmarks, paperbacks, mass market paperbacks. I'd be willing to bet there are a million choices out there. Probably one or two of which I would very much like. And maybe even a nice cheap copy of this Penguin Classic that is new, that doesn't have obnoxious highlighting. The point being that I mustn't have cared. I find it hard to believe I wouldn't notice. It's just second nature for me now to go through used books to make sure there's none of exactly that kind of highlighting. I'm thinking probably what I thought was, it doesn't matter, I can live with it because I'll never see this Penguin again. Which maybe means that I got this before the proliferation of the internet, because you can get anything online now, almost. So I don't know. This is another call to action, obviously, when it comes to reorganizing and streamlining this Penguin wall. This is not a Penguin Classic that I want to keep. Not this edition. I don't want it. I know that reading through this, if I were to get a yen to read this from beginning to end, I know that I would stop the minute I hit that pink neon highlighting, and that means I don't need this volume. It means that whether I have notes in it or not, this has to go. This particular volume, I need to find another. Both the Penguin Classic and maybe another volume. I'm trying to think if I have nearby me an example of something. Well, no, I don't have right nearby me, but you know what I mean. Like, for instance, yesterday, we saw Walt Whitman. I have a nice hardcover illustrated Leaves of Grass. I also have that Penguin Classic as kind of an essential wall backup. I want this on that wall of backups, but I think I might look around or keep an eye out at used bookstores for another version of this. But anyway, that's your Penguin Classic for today. It is a strong, strong recommend. If you read history and you haven't read Burckhardt's Renaissance, you really should. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.